A young woman vanished without a trace beneath an endless sky, her last footsteps swallowed by silence and shadows. A cross-country journey turned into a chilling nightmare, and somewhere in the wilderness, secrets waited to be uncovered. The sun was setting over the vast Wyoming plains, casting long shadows across the rugged landscape. Gabby Petito and her fiancé, Brian Laundrie, had been on a cross-country van trip, documenting their journey with smiles and laughter. But as the days passed, a dark silence began to settle in. Gabby's cheerful posts on social media stopped abruptly. The once vibrant trail of their adventure vanished like a ghost. In a small town, whispers started to spread. Gabby had disappeared. The police found Brian's car parked near Serene Forest, but there was no sign of Gabby. The cold air bit sharply, and the wind howled through the towering pine trees. Search parties combed the dense woods, their flashlights cutting through the thick darkness. Each step seemed heavier, as if the earth itself was hiding secrets beneath its soil. A haunting stillness enveloped the campsite where the couple had stayed, the fire long extinguished, the van eerily silent. Then a breakthrough, a body found in the remote wilderness. The forest held its breath as investigators carefully approached the site. The air was thick with tension, mingling with the scent of pine and damp earth. Inside the tangled brush lay the truth, grim and undeniable. But the most chilling discovery was not the body. It was what was missing. Brian Laundrie had vanished without a trace. The news sent a shockwave through the nation. Questions swirled like the restless winds that swept the Wyoming plains. How had Gabby disappeared so completely? Why had Brian vanished just as desperately? The authorities scrambled, piecing together fragments of a shattered puzzle. Every day brought new leads, new whispers, new hopes crushed under the weight of grim reality. Brian's parents reported him missing, but their words carried an uneasy edge, a silence where answers should have been. In the dense Florida swamps, where the earth was thick and waterlogged, search teams moved cautiously. The air was heavy with humidity and the unmistakable scent of decay. Each step was swallowed by mud, each sound amplified in the eerie quiet. Rumors spread of sightings, shadows moving just beyond the reach of the flashlight beams. Days turned into weeks. Public fascination twisted into obsession. News crews camped near Brian's family home, cameras capturing every flicker of emotion on faces stretched thin by grief and suspicion. The van, once a symbol of freedom and adventure, was stripped bare for evidence, its metal walls silent witnesses to unknown horrors. Gabby's family pleaded for answers, their voices trembling with raw pain. Their hearts shattered anew with each passing silence. The FBI joined the hunt, their presence casting a grim shadow over the unfolding tragedy. Inside the Laundrie family home, investigators found cryptic notes and strange phone records. Every clue hinted at a tangled web of secrets and lies. The community recoiled in disbelief as dark rumors surfaced, whispers of violence hidden behind closed doors, of love turned deadly. Brian's name became synonymous with fear and uncertainty. A chilling realization settled in. The line between victim and perpetrator blurred. The wilderness, once a backdrop for youthful dreams, now loomed as a labyrinth of terror. Late one night, a hiker stumbled upon a disturbing sight deep in the woods. A campsite hastily abandoned, a piece of torn fabric snagged on a branch. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the distant call of a lone owl. Investigators felt the weight of the forest's secrets pressing down on them. Then came the final, shattering discovery. Gabby's remains hidden away in a secluded spot, far from prying eyes. The evidence confirmed what no one dared to hope against. She had been silenced forever. But Brian was still out there, a ghost slipping through the underbrush of suspicion and dread. As the search intensified, every rustle of leaves became a potential sign. Every crack of a twig a possible breakthrough. The nation watched, breath held, hearts pounding in collective suspense. The mystery deepened, the darkness closing in with every passing hour. And somewhere just beyond the edge of the searchlight's reach, the truth waited, silent, watching, unforgiving. The days blurred into nights as the manhunt for Brian Laundrie stretched across the dense Florida wilderness. The Everglades, with its tangled mangroves and hidden waterways, became a prison and a refuge all at once. Search teams moved cautiously through the thick brush, their boots sinking into the soggy ground. The air was heavy, thick with humidity and the distant calls of unseen creatures. Every shadow seemed to flicker with menace. Every rustle whispered secrets. Brian had vanished into this labyrinth, leaving behind only fragments of his presence. Investigators found remnants of a makeshift camp, a small fire pit, scattered belongings, signs that he was still alive, but always just beyond reach. The community held its breath, caught in the grip of fear and fascination. News cameras broadcast live from the edges of the search zones, capturing the tense faces of officers and volunteers alike. But the deeper they ventured, the more the wilderness seemed to swallow their hopes. Rumors spread of sightings, a figure darting between trees, a shadow slipping through the undergrowth. Each report sent waves of urgency rippling through the search parties, only to end in frustration. The physical exhaustion was matched by an emotional toll that no one could escape. Gabby's family grieved openly, their sorrow raw and relentless. Her mother's voice trembled during press conferences, pleading for answers, for justice, for closure. The nation's sympathy became a collective heartbeat, pounding in sync with the unfolding tragedy. Meanwhile, Brian's family retreated behind closed doors, their silence amplifying the tension. Investigators uncovered chilling details. Cryptic messages, deleted texts, a trail of evasion that deepened the mystery. It was as if Brian had prepared for this disappearance, slipping into a shadow world with deadly intent. Days passed without a sign, and hope began to fray at the edges. Then, in a remote corner of the park, a discovery electrified the investigation. Officers found a backpack containing items linked to Brian, a journal, a few personal effects, a map marked with strange notations. The pages of the journal revealed a fractured mind, filled with cryptic entries and mounting paranoia. It was a window into his unraveling, a glimpse of the darkness consuming him. The map hinted at hidden locations, places where Brian might have sought refuge. Search teams followed these clues into increasingly dangerous terrain. Deep swamps where the ground threatened to pull them under, rivers choked with reeds and decay. The oppressive silence of the wilderness was broken only by the buzz of insects and the distant croak of frogs. Every moment was charged with tension, a constant struggle between hope and despair. As the search pressed on, the story took a darker turn. A remote campsite was found, abandoned in haste. The remnants told a tale of fear and desperation. A half-burned campfire, discarded food, signs of struggle. Nearby, investigators found an ominous message carved into a tree, letters jagged and raw. "Find me if you can." The chilling taunt sent a shiver through the teams. It was as if Brian was playing a deadly game, taunting those who pursued him. The atmosphere grew heavier, the night air thick with unease. Local residents whispered of strange noises and flickering lights deep in the forest. Some swore they saw a figure watching from the shadows, eyes gleaming in the darkness. Fear crept into every corner, infecting the town with suspicion and dread. Authorities increased patrols, but Brian remained elusive, a phantom moving silently through the tangled maze of trees and water. Then, a breakthrough came unexpectedly. A hiker reported a hidden shallow grave, recently disturbed, beneath a canopy of dense foliage. Forensic teams arrived quickly, their movements precise and somber. The earth was soft and dark, the scent of decay sharp in the humid air. As they uncovered the grave, the tension was palpable. Every heartbeat loud, every breath held tight. The ground yielded its secret, but it was not what anyone had anticipated. The grave was empty. Nothing but disturbed soil and broken twigs remained. The emptiness was a cruel echo of the mystery, a taunt that matched the message on the tree. Brian was still out there, watching, waiting. The search stretched on, the wilderness becoming a character in its own right, vast, indifferent, and merciless. With every passing day, the line between hunter and hunted blurred further. The chilling question lingered in the air. How far would Brian go to escape? And how much darkness had he carried with him all along? Weeks slipped by under the relentless Florida sun, each day dragging the search deeper into the unyielding wilderness. The Everglades' endless tangle of sawgrass and cypress seemed to stretch forever, a green maze with no clear path out. Search parties grew weary, their faces drawn and eyes hollow with exhaustion. Every inch of ground was combed, every waterway scanned, but Brian Laundrie remained a phantom. The weight of the unknown settled heavily on everyone involved, investigators, family, and a nation watching from afar. Gabby Petito's disappearance had transformed from a tragic mystery into a dark obsession. The media frenzy escalated, dissecting every detail, amplifying every rumor. Social media exploded with theories, accusations, and desperate calls for justice. Some saw Brian as a cunning predator, others as a victim of his own fractured mind. Inside the Laundrie family home, investigators continued their painstaking search. They uncovered more hidden clues, maps with circled areas, journal entries that grew increasingly disjointed, photos marked with cryptic symbols. Each discovery painted a portrait of a man spiraling into darkness. The journal's last pages were filled with scrawled, desperate words, pleas for help, threats, confessions written in shadows. It was a window into a mind unraveling, locked in a private battle that no one had seen coming. Outside, the environment mirrored the turmoil. Storm clouds gathered on the horizon, dark and brooding. A humid breeze shifted the air, carrying the scent of rain, and something foul beneath it. The forest seemed to close in, as if warning the searchers to turn back. Then came the call. A local hunter stumbled upon a small, hidden clearing deep in the swamps. In the center lay a tattered backpack, soaked and muddy. Its contents spilled out: clothes, a worn-out notebook, and a small, blood-stained knife. The discovery sent a jolt through the investigation. Inside the notebook were frantic sketches and fragmented notes, a mind trying to hold on to sanity amid chaos. The knife, stained dark, was a silent scream, evidence of violence or self-destruction. The air was thick with dread as forensics examined the items. Questions raced through everyone's minds. Was Brian injured, trapped, or worse? The search intensified, but the wilderness offered no mercy. Swamp waters rose with the storm, flooding trails and washing away tracks. Thunder rumbled overhead, lightning flashing like judgment across the sky. The night descended like a heavy curtain, the darkness pressing down with suffocating weight. Then a distant scream shattered the stillness. Voices rushed toward the sound, hearts pounding with adrenaline and fear. They found a campsite in disarray, signs of a violent struggle evident everywhere. Broken branches, torn fabric, deep gouges in the earth. Chaos frozen in time, but no sign of Brian. Only the echoes of his presence lingered. The searchers were left with a chilling certainty. He was close, watching, waiting for the next move in a deadly game with no rules. As dawn broke, casting pale light over the soaked landscape, the question hung heavier than ever. Would Brian Laundrie ever be found? Or was he already lost to the wild, a shadow swallowed by the very darkness he had embraced? Days bled into nights beneath the heavy canopy of the Everglades, where the sun barely pierced the thick foliage. The search for Brian Laundrie became a relentless pulse, steady, unyielding, and haunted by silence. Every trail, every waterway was examined with painstaking care. The swamp's oppressive heat clung to the skin, dripping sweat that mingled with mud and fear. The thick hum of insects was the only constant companion. The deeper the teams ventured, the more the landscape seemed to close around them, trapping them in a labyrinth of green and shadow. Gabby Petito's name echoed in every whispered conversation, a haunting reminder of the stakes. Her disappearance had become a symbol of a darker truth, a tale of love twisted into violence. In the Search Command Center, maps covered every wall, pins marking sightings and search zones. Officers and volunteers moved like ghosts, driven by a shared desperation. Then, an unthinkable discovery broke the fragile calm. Human remains were found in a shallow grave, concealed beneath a thick layer of moss and leaves. The ground was soft, disturbed recently, as if someone had tried to erase a terrible secret. Forensic teams approached with grim determination, each step heavy with the weight of the unknown. The remains were identified quickly: Gabby Petito. The confirmation shattered the fragile hope, still clinging to the hearts of many. Grief exploded anew, raw and merciless. But the search for Brian Laundrie intensified even further. The nation's eyes now focused with laser intensity. Brian was no longer just a missing person. He was a suspect, a figure lurking in the shadows of a horrifying truth. His parents, once pleading for answers, now face the unbearable silence of uncertainty. Investigators piece together the last known moments, reconstructing a timeline filled with tension and unanswered questions. Brian's final days became a dark maze of misdirection and despair. In the thick woods, a sense of menace grew, the feeling that something or someone was watching. The wind whispered through the branches, carrying fragments of a story too terrible to tell. Then, a new lead emerged, a hidden campsite, far off the beaten path. Inside, investigators found belongings stained with blood, signs of a desperate struggle. The ground nearby was churned, disturbed as if a fierce fight had taken place. A chilling note was scrawled on a scrap of paper. "I am not done." The word sent a ripple of fear through everyone involved. Brian Laundrie was still alive, still hiding, still dangerous. As storm clouds gathered once again, searchers braced against the coming deluge, both outside and within. The wilderness closed in tighter, and the line between hunter and hunted grew ever thinner. And somewhere, hidden beneath the dense canopy, a shadow moved silently, watching, waiting unseen. The storm unleashed its fury just as the sun dipped below the horizon, thunder rolling across the Everglades like a warning. Rain hammered down in sheets, turning dirt trails into rivers of mud. Search teams huddled under hastily erected tarps, eyes scanning the darkened woods that swallowed every flicker of light. The air was thick with tension, and the acrid scent of wet earth and decaying leaves. Every rustle, every snap of a twig, sent hearts racing with anticipation and dread. Brian Laundrie's name echoed in the humid night air, a ghostly presence lurking just beyond sight. In the chaos of the storm, a call crackled over the radio, a new sighting. A figure spotted near a remote canal, moving swiftly through the dense undergrowth. Searchers scrambled into the downpour, boots sinking deep into the muddy soil. Branches lashed at their faces, the swamp's fury relentless and unforgiving. They pushed forward, driven by a mixture of fear and determination. The figure disappeared into a thicket, leaving behind only disturbed leaves and a faint trail. As they followed, the eerie silence was broken by a sudden, piercing scream, raw and desperate. It cut through the storm like a knife, freezing everyone in place. The searchers exchanged grim looks and quickened their pace, adrenaline surging. They reached a clearing to find a small, tattered tent half collapsed under the weight of soaked foliage. Inside, signs of a recent struggle were undeniable. Overturned supplies, torn fabric, a bloody cloth discarded on the ground. The air was thick with the metallic scent of blood, mingling with the dampness of rain and earth. No sign of Brian, but the message was clear. He had been here. Close. Too close. The storm raged on, thunder shaking the trees as if the heavens themselves mourned the unfolding nightmare. Back at the command center, the mood was grim. Investigators pored over maps, trying to predict Brian's next move, but the wilderness had become his fortress. Time was running out. Then came a breakthrough, surveillance footage from a nearby gas station. It showed Brian, gaunt and disheveled, moving quickly through the parking lot, eyes darting nervously. The image sent chills down the spine of everyone who saw it. This was no lost boy. This was a man desperate, dangerous, and running from the darkness closing in behind him. As the days dragged on, the search area expanded, the lines between hope and despair blurring. Communities on edge, friends and family torn apart by fear and suspicion. Every corner of the country seemed to hold a whisper of Brian Laundrie's name. The case had become a mirror, reflecting the fractures in trust, the shadows lurking beneath the surface of love and obsession. And somewhere in the endless wilds, Brian waited, a ghost in the storm, a dark secret in the heart of the wilderness. The night deepened and the silence returned, heavy, suffocating, filled with unspoken dread. The breakthrough came unexpectedly, under the gray light of dawn, in a remote section of the swamp. Searchers uncovered a shallow grave, expertly concealed beneath layers of foliage and earth. The soil was freshly disturbed, the work of hands desperate to hide a terrible truth. As forensic teams carefully unearthed the remains, a solemn silence fell over the crowd. The identification was confirmed. Brian Laundrie was dead. His body showed signs of exposure and struggle, but the cause of death was ruled to be self-inflicted. The man who had vanished into wild, who had haunted the nation's imagination, was gone. No final confession, no answers beyond the silence he left behind. Gabby Petito's death had been a tragic act of violence at the hands of someone she once trusted. Brian Laundrie, her fiancé, had carried darkness within him that ultimately consumed them both. The investigation revealed a chilling pattern: arguments, threats, and moments of violence that had gone unnoticed until it was too late. It was a story of love twisted into control, of pain hidden beneath smiles and social media posts. Gabby's voice, silenced far too soon, became a symbol for victims everywhere. Her family's courage in speaking out helped shed light on the dangers of domestic abuse. The nation mourned not only her loss, but the failure to see the signs before tragedy struck. This case was a stark reminder that behind closed doors, suffering often goes unseen. It taught that vigilance, compassion, and action are necessary to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Gabby's story urges us to listen carefully, to believe survivors, and to confront the shadows before they consume more lives. In the end, the silence left by Brian Laundrie's flight and death is a haunting echo of a life lost and a warning for us all. May we remember Gabby not just for the tragedy that ended her life, but for the hope her story inspires, that no voice should ever be ignored and no cry for help should ever go unanswered.